Land Use and ULURP Committee meeting for Community Board 9. We're going to waive the reading of the rules of order. And let's start with, okay, where's our agenda? We have an agenda.
Yeah, we do. It's a
So-
welcome. Rules of order.
Let's just start with the approval of the October minutes. Buddy, Max, I know you had a correction.
Yeah, it said here under item 2.d.3, since HPD first page bottom, since HPD set to release a fair housing framework next year, we should try to get ahead of the game. I'd said talk about Zoran's plan for a citywide comprehensive plan, not the HPD targets. So I would just edit that accordingly. And I think I sent the language beforehand in writing.
Wait, was I not at this meeting?
No, you weren't.
No,
Really?
we're not.
Yeah.
What day was
Okay,
this?
where is it? 2.
Bottom of the first page.
2.d, okay, .3, okay. So I'm gonna accept your correction with the exception that I'm pretty sure you didn't say Zoran because this is prior.
I said
to
likely mayor. I did.
Okay. So how about we say,
Oh, yes.
since the mayor will release a comprehensive planning framework next year,
Or at some point now. I think I sent precise language too.
we should try to get ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair correction. Okay. Any other corrections?
Mike McKee died that day. That's why.
You're what?
Mike McKee, the head of Penance Pack.
wow.
Yeah, that's it. That's why I had no idea that I didn't miss it.
Sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you. He was doing a lot of work, so I'm doing a lot of work now.
Don't kid me, sorry, right?
You lost somebody?
Yeah, that was a longtime tenant advocate from since the 60s.
Oh, my condolences.
Yes. Yes. But yes, I'm taking over the organization. Mostly. We're trying to.
We don't want towers on the block, but we don't want any type of rezoning. Do you have more context there? Was this meeting in full, or was it one of the meetings that was cut off? Oh, Joshua,
Hi.
they're having a big transit meeting.
There's 2 chairs.
Okay, I'll go back there. That's just crap.
Are you going to go up here?
Okay, so do we have any revisions or corrections?
This is where we mostly talked about the additions to the, needs, right?
Yep.
Have they produced the final document for that? As it shows? What do you have to do?
District needs, we'll have to ask
Well,
them.
what do you put in? Is there any?
Before we discuss that, can we get a motion to approve the October minutes?
My motion to approve them.
Okay, second, thank you. Are we all in favor?
Yep. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, the motion passes, thank you. Okay, so, old business. Do we have a district needs statement yet? You would need to ask Dante. That answers that. 350 Troy Avenue, has anyone heard from the developers? This is the variance for the school. I'm just gonna quickly check with Allison, but I doubt it. Allison?
They wanted more height, right? Yes, that's the high school that wanted more
Yeah, they want to
height,
have
and
three stories.
they needed to do like a community review or something we
I
asked.
don't think so, they have not come back to us yet, Esteban, have
This is
they
the school,
reached out
right?
to you? Yeah, because I think a couple of people offered to do some community outreach.
Yeah.
So you may want to talk to the office and see if it's possible to reach out to them now
Yeah.
that the holidays are over.
Okay.
Vital Brooklyn, Kingsborough Psych, I've been getting lots of emails asking that we raise this issue of the deed reverter with the city council, and that we send letters to the city council to do that. You all know what that issue is, right? Okay, so that may be something that the office can handle. Those people aren't here today. 7399 Empire. So I understand there was a lawsuit to get a temporary restraining order on the basis of an environmental review. Does anyone want to update us on that?
I could say what I know.
Okay.
I just know there's a TRO on the site that they did some very, very shady demolition of the site. Really poorly done. And,
What was the issue specifically? Was it an environmental issue?
well, they had asbestos. They didn't do any asbestos remediation. You know, it's a toxic site. They didn't do anything for that. They went in and they demolished and they put white cloths all around the perimeter of the site, so nobody could see in at what they were doing, and they just bashed away. Like, they did things like the gates were open to the entire half smashed site, all of 4th of July weekend for like several days, that kind of stuff. Recently,
So what's the temporary restraining order asking for them to?
I haven't read it, I
Okay.
just know that it exists. I don't know, I didn't do it.
So they're asking them to redo the environmental impact statement, or what's the ask?
I am not, I'm
There's
not
something
sure.
where like the city has the lawsuit says that like the city ran afoul of a state environmental law and they have to
Okay.
do some additional environmental assessment.
Okay,
But I don't know about the merits of the accuracy, but that's what the TRO says.
And they're over there, they're currently, people are still on the site on and off, and they're like doing very shady things late at night, doing something to the sidewalk. I went by there and like tried to take a picture, and a guy like chased me with a cement thing, like I couldn't take a picture, you know? I have a picture of him chasing me with this thing, this steel thing, and I ran away with my dog. I just was like, what are they doing, you know, in the night, you know, because I like to take a picture, look at it later, and I left, and they were there, and they were doing something like grinding the sidewalk, grinding this huge grinding machine. They didn't know.
so they're working in violation of the TRO. When does it expire?
I don't know, because they were on the sidewalk and they had like a rental truck. There was no official business or.
Do you know when the TRO
Contractor?
expires?
I
There's
have
a
no
hearing in
idea.
November,
Okay,
so it goes through I think through the judge's hearing.
okay.
So
Okay,
they're
maybe
they're
next
over there.
meeting-
They're doing stuff, but they are doing anything
So
extensive.
it's still in effect and they might be working in violation of the TRO.
It would seem so if I don't know if the TRO covers the sidewalk, or, you know, they put in like a new gate, they put in like a few other things, you know, maybe to get ready for their,
So we might have an update by next meeting then.
maybe, but it's, you know, what's going on. I don't know, for sure. Did you-
Okay, all right, thank you.
Nothing to know about her name. It's weird.
What was it?
Under nice stuff anyway. What's the name of the person being sued? Or the?
I can send you the lawsuit though.
Okay.
I'll just send it to you.
it was a new developer.
You know who filed it?
Huh? I'll email it to you guys.
Well, if it's a TRO based on the environmental review,
Yes.
it would have to be this against the city and, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll email it to you guys. I might be misrepresenting something accidentally. Let me dig this up and I'll send it to you. Cool.
So, the ballot measures passed. What does this mean for us? We know, from the town hall that we did, that there's two parts to Prop 2, right? One is the BSA affordable housing variance that could apply to us. We could see some of those applications. They will still come to the community board, then it will go to the BSA and it will stop there. So that's something that we have to be prepared to review. There's a lot of open questions. Usually the BSA has pretty strict criteria. In this case, the criteria are basically that HPD certifies that the upzoning or the variance is necessary. So that's something we need to find out more about, is what are those criteria upon which HPD can certify that it's necessary. And also I think people are going to want to look into what kind of affordability these HDFCs offer. My understanding is it can be up to 165% of AMI. For the portion, there's a portion of it that has to be at least MIH, and for the remaining portion of it, it's subject to whatever the HDFC's rules are, and those can be up to 165% of it. Not necessarily that high, but it could be.
And what about the timing? Like, it's supposed to be fast tracked. So from what I was reading, attempting to understand, is how fast is it exactly, this tracking, to move it forward, the period of time between when they vote and move the project forward? So apparently that was the
Yeah,
delay.
so that's
Ready.
not completely clear either. We have to look at the final
I couldn't
rules.
find that.
We didn't, I got a copy of the draft rules from a guy who was a zoning expert, but I don't think those were ever released to the public after the hearing, so we need to look at that carefully and see how many days we get to review these projects, but we have to be prepared to do this very quickly because we usually need a public hearing as well. So Prop 3 is where we might see more action because it's not clear whether there's going to be an affordability requirement, and if they can do up to 30% more in these R6, R7, even R5 districts, that's going to be something that's attractive to market rate developers. Whether the City Planning Commission will allow market rate increases, we don't know. Again, these are all things that could happen, but we don't know the answer to that. In the lower density districts, they certainly are going to be allowed without affordable housing, so that may impact some of the lower density areas. Some of the lower density areas may not be impacted because we're already way over the allowed FAR. So like, for example, if you have a 2,000 square foot townhouse on a 2,000 square foot lot in an R2, you're still not able to expand your house. If you're, a detached house, or if you're in an R5, if you're a townhouse in an R5, you might actually be able to double the size of your house. But those are gonna go, once again, it's gonna be a community board hearing, go before the planning commission, and the planning commission will decide. It's not gonna go before the council. What else? So proposal 3 would not likely, again, those are sort of like big rezoning proposals, or, even like a site-specific rezoning, like for example, 7399, that does go before the council because it's not a modest rezoning, and we're not a fast-track neighborhood. So whatever it is that the,
Yeah, what are the lists of the?
Were they those 12 neighborhoods?
yeah, so the 12 neighborhoods that the people are anticipating might be part of the fast track. It's the neighborhoods that we talked about that have very low affordable housing production. A number of the neighborhoods in South Brooklyn.
It's the upper, if you want the list, I can give it to you.
Yes, let's hear it.
Sorry, not to interrupt, I just
Well,
have the list.
Let's hear it, let's hear it.
It's basically, it's South Brooklyn, Eastern Queens, the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side, potentially some areas in the Northeast Bronx.
So they've not been supposedly building enough, but some of those areas are flood prone. It doesn't make sense so much.
Well,
to build.
I mean, we won't, we discussed the merits of this before, so we won't get into that again, but the list is going to be released by, I think, HPD starting in 2026 and looking back at the prior 5 years, and then every 5 years, it'll be updated. So, again, we need to also keep our eye on our affordable housing production, which we don't expect to be low in the coming 5 years because we've got some very big projects coming up like Vital Brooklyn. But you never know, right? It depends on what everybody else does too. So we've got to keep our eye on what everybody else is doing as well. So
It appears
the other
like
thing-
we've created a lot of affordable housing, but we should really get a handle on that, right?
well, we do know. I mean, we talked about this before. We went through all the numbers, right? And so we
But
do
it's
know that
rapidly
for
changing, it's changing. Like,
well, we do know that for the past
4 new developments have opened up in my neighborhood alone.
Well, hang on, Teresa. I mean, like those are things that were already on the list because they were permitted much earlier, right? So we already know from the 2026 to 2021 period, we already know what we've done. I think going forward from 2026 onwards, we're going to have to keep our eye on where we are there. The proposal for, like I said, for something like 7399 Empire, where the council member still has a say in negotiating what happens, there's a chance that they could be overturned by the 3-person board with the speaker, the borough president, and the mayor.
But
So-
just quickly, they could still do this now, or is it a done deal? You're just using it as an example.
No, I'm just using it as an example, right? I mean, it's possible that could be over, like, for example, but I mean, in this case, Crystal Hudson voted yes, and the council voted yes to pass it. But let's say, for example, Crystal Hudson had said, I'm not voting yes unless I get, 50% of the units at 40% of AMI, and the developer just said, forget it, I'm walking away, right? And the council was forced to vote no, then that decision could potentially be overturned by an appeals board consisting of the mayor, the borough president, and the council members. So that's something we have to be aware of. I think we have to be more aware of the borough president's position and the mayor's position.
The whole housing crisis might abate if everybody was fleeing the city actually does.
Well, certainly, that's,
But they'll keep their house here and they'll just have their residence in Connecticut or somewhere where they have to pay less taxes. And
Well,
they'll
if
still
they
be here
keep
with
their
their.
house here, they have to pay taxes here.
Yeah, but you
My
don't,
income tax.
Taxes in Connecticut?
well, I'm just saying a place like Florida, right? They're gonna reside in Florida, but they will pay some house taxes,
we
but
don't,
not income.
the situation is ever evolving. We don't know what that's gonna be. There's no point in speculating until the new data comes out. But, these rules are here to stay regardless. There's nothing that says that the rules are changing if the situation changes. So this is just something we need to be prepared for. One thing I did want to talk about with respect to community engagement is, I know a lot of you may have been active in talking to your neighbors about ballot measures, about housing issues, about ULURP. And so I know I did, I actually went out on the street and I canvassed. And I'm just curious what you guys learned, if anything, about what people know about the land use process, what they understand about it and don't understand about it, because I think this could be a very useful lesson for us going forward.
A lot of what I hear from my neighbors is basically the developer's gonna do what they're gonna do, and they don't feel like they really have a voice in the wherewithal, the decisions that have been made. They feel kind of alienated, and that the reach hasn't been enough, And then when you think of the proposals, there were flyers that went out, but there was the meeting that was had, but there's still a lot of alienation with the residents that live in homes or people in apartments. So there is still that massive need to get the community engaged.
Do you think that people understand the respective roles of the community boards and the council members and so on?
Personally speaking, no. Who I've talked to, I mean, I don't know what everyone else has encountered, but it's that whole thinking that, the developers are gonna do what they do, and money talks.
So there's not even a good understanding of how democracy works in the process.
How they're not fully understanding that they can still make an impact.
Anyone else?
I know my community was against it primarily because it was just giving the mayor's office more power.
Right.
The truth of the matter is, there's no democratic
This is
process
cold.
right now.
The balance is.
There's a few people that make the decisions, so I guess all this does is makes it easier for them to make these decisions. Less roadblocks. As it is, we're just an advisory board, and then even when we come out against a certain zoning resolution, it gets overridden by either the board president or even the council member. So, this is why I thought introducing the neighbors, the actual people who live next door to a development, should have to have a say in it. Should be able to sign an affidavit or something allowing the project to go forward, because we can't rely on our public representatives to accurately.
Or even the DOB that was supposed to protect us isn't protecting people, or,
DOB works for the mayor's office. I mean, they work for they're part of the executive office for the mayor, so they don't represent us. They work for the mayor.
I definitely find there's a lot of confusion between what DOB does and what zoning does, right? People don't necessarily recognize the distinction between building code and zoning code.
Well, I talked to quite a lot of my neighborhoods. I handed out flyers. I went up and down all the streets around here, on flyers, talked to my neighbors, knocked on doors. And, it's a wide variety of what people know and what they don't know, and their expectations of the government and our city government and what's happening and the, voting on
Give us
the.
some of the highlights. I'm just really interested to know.
Well, some people don't care at all and read your poetry, and some people, deeply care, and I felt like,
In terms of like what people know and don't know, what they're understanding and
well,
not.
it's very difficult to explain a 90-page document when it's, 90 pages of changes, when I felt like that people were reading, the synopsis seemed biased, toward like using the affordability language and the one.
So the camera's right now.
Yeah,
Using the affordability complex, was like this, and I think some people didn't really understand how it could have. It seems like, affordability, I'm voting for that. When is it really going to be affordable for them? I think we have a lot of struggles, with people losing their homes right now, getting forced out of their apartments, the deed theft, different types of ways that people are getting moved out, forced out, tricked out of their housing, and then people are really afraid to be advocates for themselves, or advocate in any way if they're in the apartments, like say for Evans Field example, people are deathly afraid of being forced out of their housing because that's what I heard. You know, the rent is gonna go up, their landlord is like tightening the grip in ways you can't imagine. So they are afraid to do anything, and they, you know, they feel they're everybody's moving out, they can't come back, you know, it's like the apartments that are being built are really, you know, are very few and far between for say just a lot of families in the neighborhood, and where I live with in apartment buildings, in the houses, they're raising kids. These kids are going to college, they want to come back, they want to live in the neighborhood, and their job, even if they're like a teacher, a nurse, you know, high-paying job, they can't afford an apartment, you know, and then I think there's a lot of
Yeah, I think.
sadness, you know, and upset and anger because of what's happening to them. I mean, that's like, you know, we have a large immigrant population in this neighborhood, and they're also being, you know, displaced. Like, this was a great place for people to find affordable housing, and now it's becoming the opposite. There's a lot of pressure, like, you know, a landlord, say you have a 2-family house, 3-family house, you're charging a low rent, and then suddenly somebody says, well, you could be getting, what, your tenant's only paying $1,500? Don't you know you could be getting $3,000? I will pay you more. And then people are getting displaced by that. So they, you know, when you talk to them about, they tell me everything about their whole life and how they really want to go into these newer buildings. But like I met a woman walking down the street, and she lived in this neighborhood, she was a senior, she had to move to Staten Island, she was trying to get back here, and she was just going from building to building to building, looking to get in, to put in an application, because these buildings are not, you know, in the Housing Connect. A lot of them, they have apartments, and I think she said, you know, I can afford a decent place, but nobody will talk to me. And I walked with her for a little bit. She went in, she was in the places, those newer buildings on Sullivan between Bedford and Nostrand. There's a bunch of new buildings there with new apartments, and they were really rude to her, you know?
Yeah, I think the whole affordable for who question is still.
So that's like, you know,
concerning thing that people are asking.
she really wants to come back, right?
Yeah.
She has some money, but she's not,
So I had a neighbor who said, like, but aren't these proposals all about low income? And I think, you know, once again, how to define affordable housing is
You just can't use that word anymore.
Yeah.
It literally is meaningless.
really is.
On either,
because
on either,
affordable
yeah.
is like, you know, if you're making 100,000, you're like low income because everybody else is making 250,000.
It's just, it's too easy to manipulate the word in either direction at this point, like and that leaves confusion because nobody seems to really know what it means or have, you know, everyone has a different definition, so, and it has definitely been manipulated on both sides of that issue, so like, I think we need better terms, more precise terms.
Do you recommend like AMI? Like how should we do that? Like how would we do that?
It's an active question in my circles, and that's coming from like the housing movement is very split on a lot of these issues, more so than probably they thought we were, and so we have a lot of stuff to work through. But I thought it was interesting that the folks that I spoke with from the area that sort of pay attention to these issues felt that in our particular situation, like specifically Community Board 9, maybe a little bit Community Board 8, but that we've been dealing with essentially Crystal not really pushing for the kind of affordability that we thought she would, and then Reynosa sort of tagging along with that. And the hope was that because a lot of us have like relationships with Zoran, that he would be able to veto them and get more affordability, but that's not the case anymore because now they can actually overrule him. So it's a very weird, very nuanced, specific to Community Board 9 sort of thing, but now having that direct relationship with him doesn't necessarily guarantee that we'll get more affordability, which I'll try, but you know. So that was my weird very nuanced, specific.
It's not weird at all, it's very good to have your insight.
Yeah, I also think that just the basic understanding of what the community board does, what the council does, there's lots and lots of new people in the city that don't know on a very basic level who does what.
They don't know what's going on.
You know, some people think the community board has a binding say, some people think we have no power at all, you know, like they've just sort of given up. So I think definitely sort of like helping people to understand what we do is in terms of zoning, are you guys feeling like the zoning parts of the proposal where people are understanding that, like what that means?
No. Some people understand clearly, but some, I think by and large, like my neighbor, you know, I have like several new neighbors, and I talk to them about it, and I feel like they go like, oh my God, because, you know, it's like the zoning in my specific neighborhood where there's R6, there's R7 across Rogers, along Sullivan, you know, R6, but what R6 can be now, and the pressure, we're getting some pretty weird pressure with all of a sudden. Like I got like some emails offering an extraordinary amount of money for my house, you know, and it's just like, what the F is this? Who is this? You know, and the way that they could develop, like Nicola's mom lives right across the street from me, and what are they gonna do on Empire? You know, that can really have a huge impact on every one of my neighbors, you know, how this is gonna change. And even though that's C8, you know, it's like just explaining, well, this is C8, this is, you know, that people are like, what? You know, somebody could buy this and build a really much bigger than even before. Like, we didn't have as much pressure because the other end of Sullivan, you could build, and there's several new buildings that went up there. You know, decent sized, a lot of apartments. One went up in our neighborhood because it was a really big lot. That was done very poorly. You know, the developers that are coming in are not kind. They don't follow the rules. They don't do things properly. Like, they demolish, they pour concrete in the street, they pour concrete in the drain. They don't take care of the asbestos. They're not developing in a way that's safe and proper. They just don't believe they have to. And they've told me that as much, you know, like, what, lady, you think we care? You know, we just pay the fines.
Cheryl, you talk to a lot of your neighbors, right? You're talking about, you know, in terms of community engagement going forward. What did we learn about what our neighbors know and don't know about the ULURP process, about zoning, about land use? It's easy to talk to people about these issues.
They have no clue. They have no faith in the community board. They have no faith in the elected officials. I haven't spoken to anybody in the neighborhood since we were doing the town hall. And there's a lot of people, a few people are interested. Were they online? Were they at the town hall? I don't know. I see what's going on. There's a house around the corner from me on Winthrop. They're gutting it out. It's not gonna be torn down and rebuilt. But they're gutting it out. And they came to pour the cement, and I know what you're talking about. All the cement, all the stuff is just going right down into the drain.
You gotta
and they're
report
leaving
that.
it. I went to them, I said, you must clean this. He said, no, they have to clean it. I'm like, I don't care who cleans it. Someone needs to hose this down, but still,
But
it's
they
going,
can't hose
but
it
it's
down.
still-
You're not allowed to. You're
but
not
it's
allowed
still
to
going
dump it
into the sewer.
drain.
and that's where it's going.
Ask Rod about that. You can call 311 and the fire and the 1-800 number, and they will come out. Because I learned this. They've been doing this in my neighborhood rapidly.
Like
I
you
would
say,
say,
developers
like
don't
I've seen it
care.
happen, 50 times.
They just want the building up.
They're not
That's it.
allowed to. They're not allowed to do it. So you can report them. But get the truck. Get the truck logo. And I don't know. It's a state agency that comes.
Anybody else? Joshua, Max, your reactions from people you talk to, neighbors about,
Yeah, when I went canvassing,
you know,
people
ballot
were,
proposals?
canvassing was good for the ballot proposals. Yeah, people are excited to learn about the process. I think a lot of people don't understand the technicalities of the process.
Do you think it's something that's easy, hard for people to understand? Like, what's the most frequently asked question you guys think?
I think that it's easy to explain if you make it easy for people to understand. Like, I think you can give people a good, good gloss of it in like 2 to 3 minutes. But I feel like if you get into the technicalities, people get confused very quickly. And I feel like sometimes when you, I'm going to close the doors. Anyone else care? It's freezing in here. I feel like when you know a lot about the subject, it makes it difficult for you to talk to a normal person about it. So I think you can explain clearly to people that's valuable.
Yeah, I feel like most conversations I had started with people not even knowing that there were even questions to answer on the ballot, let alone like some of those translate into zoning and land use changes. And I think, in general, it's always good to sort of focus on the outcomes that you want to happen, and I think that's
Or what could happen or not happen.
what could happen, what would not happen, and also what would you like to see, and how you should take action accordingly. And yeah, so that's how some of those conversations have gone.
Yeah, I definitely find that people either think that they have no power to direct development, that developers can do whatever they want, or that nothing can happen on my block except what is already exactly here, right? And it's very, very difficult for people to understand the ways in which zoning does shape development. I think the only time that people really get it is when you show them a picture of something that's already happened. And then they're like, oh.
Absolutely correct.
So to me, like, the visuals is a really, really big part of it. And then they can start to think about, okay, well, if this happened, then what happened to the person who lived there? Who's going to get to live in the new building, right? Like, it has to be very concrete.
Well, I think people come to learn about these things often when there's an actual development very near to where they live, and they're just like, how did this happen? How could you let this happen to me? This is horrible. Their wall is caving in their basement, and horrible things happen to their homes and their families, and people are,
If you satellite 703 Midwood, you can see the difference in this tall glass building and the 2 level houses next to it. You could just look at it. It's a big difference.
There's 2 things. One is that people only find out about the development after construction's already started. So I think for one thing is that I think neighbors should get a notification as soon as somebody applies for a zoning change or a building permit. Otherwise, how are they supposed to know? Another thing
I
is,
agree with that.
that I don't know if there is a flow chart or something that explains, the whole process from applying for a variance or a building permit, all the steps and how much time they had for each step in order to protest against it or file against it. So, like you said, we need something visual. So if there was like a flow chart or something that,
The town hall had a flow chart.
The whole process, and also the timing of the process. And that has to be updated based on new things like the charter revisions, because now that changes the whole process. So, I mean, maybe we should put something up. If there's a web, do we have a website or?
The board member does have a website.
Right, so maybe we should have like a flow chart, and this is the current
We
ULURP
would have
process.
to put it in like our minutes or something and put it on attached to our minutes, I think.
And we can definitely
So it's
ask
online, right?
Dante to maintain a list of the building permits in the district and send them out to people in the district in a summary form.
That's important.
Honestly, I would have to say in my experience, by the time a building permit is filed, it's too late. You actually need to know when the property is sold. And so that's something that we could look at too, because it might also alert us to things like, the deed theft, but that's definitely something we could do. We could look at putting up more of the materials on the website. But I find people don't really go to the Community Board 9 website unless you have some business there. So the other part of community engagement I wanted to talk about is how can we reach out to people?
Well, I think people also need to be informed about, when a building goes up, there are regulations that are supposed to be followed that are not followed in very disturbing, worse ways that really affect the air quality, toxicity, breaking pipes, street collapse, wall collapse, all these things I've seen, it's bad, and it's, affecting all those kids that live in Ebbets Field, people that live right next to Ebbets Field are being impacted by all that stuff that's going on there, and it's, they're not following the regulations for the asbestos, there were there's both toxic sites there that's documented, and they're not doing the proper remediation, so, and people aren't informed about, they just think like, what the hell, they're gonna do whatever they want, which they do, and there's ways to,
Do people know to call 311? Do they?
I think some do, but they don't want to, or they're afraid to, they don't wanna, get in trouble, they don't wanna, they're worried about their apartment, they just don't wanna deal with any kind of agency,
So in terms of how do we best reach out to people, what are you guys?
Do people contact you and say, can you call 311 for me, can you help me with this? I get this a lot, and I do, and it's a lot of work, so I would like to help people more with, the biggest question I get that I can't really help with is, like, people from the church, they, Marcia, who lives in my box, says, Teresa is on the community board, you have to ask her about this stuff. And people come to me and they ask me, like, how can I get into this building that's being built, or the other new building, what do I do? And I don't really have answers, other than.
So one thing that maybe we could ask the housing committee to do, and or the office, is to, regularly put out the housing lotteries. I know my council member held a workshop on construction issues, how do you mitigate construction issues. So these are all like not specifically, all things that I think are very good to do. Maybe they're not specifically land use or zoning, but in terms of like how we can reach out to people specifically about the ULURP or the zoning issues, what are you guys thinking about? What's the, way to reach a larger number of people? Because like Joshua says, a lot of people they don't even know that any of this exists, right?
So I don't have a specific recommendation right now, but are there any community boards, land use committees that do a better job at this than us? And what can we learn from those folks?
Somebody,
Try to-
I think
Reinvent the
mailings,
wheel when somebody else could know.
mailings I know has helped some community boards. They do mailings, they do a newsletter, and they use that to reach out. Community Board 8 does a newsletter, I saw, and I've seen other boards.
The electronic boards, we see it for Community Board 9, it's on there. The electronic boards that are on Nostrum and Lefferts, and there's one on Troy and Union. I mean, they're there. Do people see it? Do they look?
What do they say? I've never seen it.
I've seen it.
It's just
Whenever
like
there's a
the
community board meeting
meetings,
and
it's
stuff.
the advertising the meetings.
Yeah, there's QR codes that pop up and you can, it's on there.
I think sending
So
out.
they're on there. Mailings are good, but.
Annual mailer, because people, when they have something in their hand, they're more likely to look at. People get inundated with emails, so that all of it gets.
Yes, right.
They don't want.
I think
they
at
don't
least
see it.
once or
A
twice
postcard
a year.
type of
I think
mailing.
that's a good idea, yeah.
A postcard with a
is
QR
cheaper,
code that you
yeah.
can scan for
Understand your
information.
ULURP process.
A lot of people don't even know what a QR code is. They don't use
Yeah,
What,
we
it.
can
what
totally
do people
scan.
think about some kind of an educational town hall or workshop?
It's tough for people to get to,
Do they come out?
You see how many people showed up for the
Exactly.
charter revision, town hall. It's not easy for people to get out, unless there's a fire burning, or.
I thought it was a pretty good turnout at the school when we were talking
It
about
was okay, but not for the amount of work we did. There should have been a lot more
That's the
people,
one.
and even online.
I don't know, because I feel like, at least from a tenant standpoint, our orientation is gonna change towards the ULURP process. I'm not sure how exactly, but, like, we're focused on actual affordability, and so we're gonna try to come up with ways of using whatever it is that exists now after this has happened, to get that. So, you know, I guess I'm thinking less about what we've been doing and trying to figure out how we change it.
Advocate.
Yeah, and then I mean, I think that yeah, a lot of it's gonna have to, like, we're gonna have to just see how it works out. I don't know how much different, you know, it's gonna be to try to lobby a different group of people. I think that there's the possibility that we would have to, I mean, you know, the whole thing with member deference, like, is interesting because it can be more work to have to lobby the entire council, but it also can improve your outcome if you're good at what or, you know, convincing about what you're lobbying for. So, but in terms of communicating that, I think it's really hard. Like, the terminology is just so watered down that, like, it's really almost impossible to explain why this kind of affordable is not the same as this kind of affordable, and why one is good and one isn't. And then I guess, yeah, I think there's going to be, like, there's a pretty distinct split in the in at least the tenant movement, and there's always been like a sort of imbalance between, like, tenants that are, like, organized, and then, like, community development groups that do tenant organizing as like just something else they do, like part of their, like, you know, like the Avenue Committee or Impact or those sorts of folks. So I think that split's going to become more distinct.
Like non-for-profits, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. There's a possibility that we can use some of this to our advantage and actually get really good projects passed that would not have been possible before. I don't know how much that works here exactly, but and then actually one thing that I'm Max, you probably know this, but, like, I've had a hard time getting a straight answer from anyone. The 12 districts, it has to be number of units produced, right? It has nothing to do with it if a rezoning passes, correct?
Yeah, there's number of units produced.
So,
and there's like a percentage basis.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing is that we don't really get a say in if something gets, like, if somebody gets a rezoning pass and then they decide not to build, for example, then that's not, like, we don't get quote unquote credit for that if we haven't.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
up to the private developers for the most
Right.
part.
So I
And
don't-
sometimes they don't do anything for 10 years.
Right. So I think that's going to be the trickiest thing to message and to make people understand that, like, what we're doing here is not necessarily what gets translated there, because I think that's, yeah, it's tricky. And it might require maybe putting more pressure on, I mean, a lot of this is kind of like soft power that, like, I think the borough president, council member they have ways to make developers do things, they don't always use them, so, yeah. I don't know. It's hard, I mean, we're in buildings all the time, like, we're essentially canvassing nonstop when we're organizing, so, like, it's not about having the opportunity to tell people things, it's just, like, there's so much other stuff happening, and, like people want very clear, like, easy things, and, like, just there's no clear and easy way to explain what affordability is. People are throwing around terms like even low income is kind of, like, not really, it's still very subjective, but there are some terminologies that you could use that would help at least understand. When I'm trying to communicate something to somebody, I usually say, this is not a place that you will be able to live in. Like, based on the AMI, whatever that is, like, that's a much easier way to, like, make clear to somebody, like, what it is that they're looking at. Like, is this something that I can move into? Like, do I consider myself low income? Do I consider myself somebody who would need to live in affordable housing? And once people get a sense of where they sit in the current, your current landscape, that makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, well, this isn't for you, so, like, most likely it's gonna be bad for you somehow, so, or not, there's you know, even things that are billed as 100% affordable can be like, I've seen really great projects at 100% affordability, and I've seen some really, really shitty projects at 100% affordability. So I think we could benefit from sort of a more precise, you know, language that is on our terms, I guess, is maybe the way I want to think about it. Like this, that we decide how we, like, even as a community board, we can decide like, these are the terms that we're going to use, and like we're just not going to use the term affordability anymore in this context because it doesn't mean anything anymore. So we're going to say this or this or this, and then the people that show up will understand what that means, and we sort of, as a community, can make decisions based on the actual things that are being presented and not like all the other stuff that's floating around. So.
Suki, I have a question in regards
Yes,
to the
Cheryl.
community engagement. Do we have a listing of all the presidents, the Black Association presidents? And do they have to register somewhere? Because if
You know,
not, we can reach out to them
Yeah.
and see if they can restart if they have not started, work with each president that's in the community, even encourage someone to do. But if there is a rule of order of, okay, this block has to be, you know, is there zoning for, or can they just do their own, but they have to register? So is there a way that we can get the registered
So we
one?
actually probably do have a lot of this contact information because anytime anybody wants to do a block party, they're coming to the
I think
community
so. I
board.
think we should
Darcy
reach out to
was
them that
gathering
way.
that information a while
So,
ago.
I mean, that might be, and you
But
know,
I don't
Also,
likewise.
Richard
if-
Hurley has like a working list of like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise, if you have, you know, if you all have tenant association, contacts,
Yeah.
this is a way that maybe it's a little bit easier to get a more targeted way to get people to do something like a land use workshop, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not something that like, I think you're completely right that if you just go around to the average person, you literally have like 30 seconds or less to say something to them, and it can't really be captured like that. Like, I don't know, how many of you have seen the CUP booklets, the Center for Urban Pedagogy?
Yeah, they're great.
I actually think they're really good. I mean, you know, there's always something in there that you might not agree with, but overall, I think they do a very good job of explaining zoning in terms that a lot of people could understand. And they also have like suggested like workshops and role play ideas at the end, which maybe could be ideas for a workshop if people think that's a good idea.
We did a really great workshop during the Bedford Union Armory thing, where we had people stand at the front of the room with like a sign saying who they were. So like, I'm the borough president, I'm this and this, and like just, and then people just asked questions based on that. And it was, I mean, like we developed like a curriculum. This was early BSA stuff, but like the whole curriculum on just explaining the ULURP process, which I think would probably be super useful now because the process is changing. So, but like visualizing it that way, and then also like
Like a civics 101?
yeah, and then like you could also just do basic power mapping, which is literally just like
I like that idea.
getting like who has power to do what, like who has actual power, who has advisory power, who has, and then you get a sense of where, like what you can actually do and what you can't. I think a lot of people come to the community board expecting
That we could do something.
that yeah, and like and there's it's actually not the case in a lot of, and so I think as long as we're being honest about what we can do and like we can influence, we can slow things down sometimes, but like we're not have never been empowered to we've never been empowered to the level that I think that we would like to think, and
Right.
so if we're not communicating that honestly, then we're not really serving, you know, we're essentially just setting people up to be disappointed. So
Yeah.
so I think just being really honest about that and learning, figuring out the system.
I do think that even for a lot of community board members, it takes a lot of time to understand where that soft power comes from. And to me, really, it comes from us representing the community, right? That's why the community is so important. And so I think, you know, the block associations, the tenant associations, I do want to reach out to some of the NYCHA developments. We only have 3, but we still have them. And, you know, there are going to be land use conversations around those areas. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that we specifically want to do anything, but at the city level, this has been a big thing. And so, you know, we need to make sure that we're reaching out.
So what was the website you said that you used to have some?
Center for Urban Pedagogy?
Okay.
So I'm thinking I'm gonna ask Dante to order the books for all the board members. That would definitely
Are
be a
those the
start.
books like this is zoning, this is?
Yeah, this is affordable housing, et cetera.
Yeah, I got those, but I gave them away.
They're probably, I mean, obviously they're outdated now too, in
Yeah.
terms of the, but they'll probably
Yeah.
be trying to get rid of them, so, yeah, might be
Yeah.
able to get, might be able to get a discount.
I read them and then gave them to somebody.
They're good in that
Cheryl, what's up?
they did,
somebody
engage
said
like
there was
a
a
lot of
website.
community groups
Yeah, I
into
can-
those, like, I know
Urban
they talked
Percentage.
to us about.
Want me to send it to you?
so, you know.
But they're quite decent. So do we want to aim for maybe some sort of workshop in the spring? Is that something that works for people?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that we should like sort of regroup once we're like, I mean, we're gonna see things happening fairly quickly, I think, in terms of how some of these things will play out, but I think that it's, you know, spring, maybe late spring-ish to give it a chance to, but like, there's a lot of stuff happening in
Send it to you, Cheryl.
the multifamily market right now that's gonna be like messy, like there's foreclosures
yeah.
coming in.
Oh, I heard about
Oh,
it.
it's
Yeah.
really, really bad, like it's
Yeah.
really, really bad. I mean, Pinnacle's just like a very
Typically,
yeah,
it's for-
and Pinnacle buildings, there's 90 of them being auctioned off in January already.
Is this
like,
because
it's-
they're over leveraged? Like what's
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah, the correction is coming and like, we're gonna have to just weather it, but like, it's pretty bad, like it's, there's like the three biggest portfolios are gonna fold before the middle of next year. And the hope is that HPD and the Zoran administration will be able to acquire as many of those as they possibly can as a way to preserve them. Use the NYCHA Preservation Trust or some other vehicle to do it, but I'm sitting in these meetings with HPD now, like the conversations are very intense. There's like they're not gonna be able to save them, you know, all of them. And what's gonna happen is groups like Blackstone and the big developer slash landlords are going to be able to buy them up for very, very cheap.
Vultures are so, wish the communities could buy them.
Well, yeah, and the problem is that the existing, I mean, like, they're about to pass COPA, which is the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, which in theory would help, but it doesn't apply to foreclosures or bankruptcies. So, and that's actually the actual problem that we're having right now. So, so there's not even any legislation in the pipeline for ways to acquire this. So it's gonna have to happen by, you know, rules and HPD. Zoran's gonna need to staff HPD super quickly and like hit the ground running. There's a lot of good that they can do, but I think that we're gonna be basically reacting to that and what that does to, you know, what all those foreclosures and everything do in terms of development. I really don't know. You know, I can see it going either way. Like a developer might want to tear down a building because it's, you know, it's no longer viable to keep it running. But yeah, I think in the spring, like we could do, I mean, if we did a workshop on like changes that have happened and how we can maybe be really specific about it and like how can we fight for more affordability in a particular project. I think that's something that people would be interested in. Like how can we actually like, where can we be actually effective so that we're not just like sitting around and talking about things that aren't gonna like, that we're not gonna be able to do anything about. So
I mean, for years we focused on like we really need to focus on preservation of the affordability. Is that really our focus, or will these foreclosures mean that we are losing even basic housing stock?
well, I mean, like the foreclosures don't
Affordable
change like.
buildings are foreclosing.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of that too is like a rent stabilized building is a rent stabilized building, like whether it's foreclosed on or not. So like protections don't actually change. It's the fact that you don't get to them before a landlord convinces them otherwise, or you know does all sorts of shady things to get them out, like the stuff that's happened on Eastern Parkway, which they did finally empty out that building. They were able to do it after years and years and years.
Eastern Parkway, what?
It's I forgot what the the address was, there was 2 tenants left in there.
The cross street?
It's in between Franklin and Classen, so.
It's actually just over the line in Ward 8, but Michael Hollingsworth had come to our board to
Yeah.
talk about it.
And I mean, we were able to hold, like, it was still in court, but the landlord just essentially used, like, these old ladies' kids, basically, to convince them to, like, to leave for, like, really, really, really not adequate buyouts, like, just, like, it was really, really bad. And they, like, scared them out of there, basically. And we had a ton of people there, like, we certainly had, like, the organization was happening, but, like, we got there too late, so there's a building literally next to it that I'm working with now that is, like, just bought, and, like, they seem to be trying to put them through the same process. So, but I think that's, like, I think what you're actually gonna end up with right now is a whole lot of people living in very, very terrible conditions with nobody being able to do anything about it, like the city not having the ability to buy the building, and, like, the landlord not really, like, they're just not paying their bills anymore, like, you know?
So there's a lot of other rules that come into play with this also, obviously, but one aspect of ULURP that we don't talk about a lot is when the city buys or sells, when you're selling city-owned property or when the city is purchasing property. So that may be something that we want to discuss ourselves at a future committee meeting and discuss also in the context of, a town hall meeting. Because obviously you need the ability to move quickly, but also you need to have oversight and transparency, and we want the community to have the power in this situation. Okay, so maybe do we want to have a subcommittee maybe to work on this, like town hall, or does everybody want to? I mean, we can talk about it on the Google list some more. I guess the first step really is to start thinking about, as Cheryl was saying, reaching out to various groups, see who we can invite. And then we can think about we can look through that CUP book and get some ideas and get some suggestions for next time.
I definitely need, like, a little bit of time to see how things are playing out.
Yeah.
It makes sense, because otherwise we're just, like, speculating. So I mean, I'd love to have some, like, actual, I mean, by then HPP will be formed into whatever it is that they're gonna try to,
By when, like, you think February?
No, I mean ideally by
January?
January, like, HPD has to hire significantly more, like, we're talking exponentially more people than they have right now to be able to do the things that they're talking about doing. I mean, I think, right, that's the idea that.
Yeah, they're really understaffed.
Yeah, super understaffed. I mean, all the agencies are, and DHCR is as well, but, like, right now, that's where the Zoran administration is thinking that money needs to go, and I think they're right on that. So I think that happens separately from Department of City Planning, but you're right that that HPD does have say. There will be interaction with HPD and ULURP, so that means that we could meet with HPD. We could have a relationship with HPD as a land use committee where we're talking about these things, and where we can at least have another point of entry to be able to influence things. But I think a lot of,
There's going to be discussion about these housing frameworks. It's worth having HPD in to see where they're at and where we're at. Okay, so then
Like January, or are you thinking, or December?
no, I mean, we'll once something is, like, once we know exactly what's happening there and, like, how it's going to be affecting, it's not going to take long. I mean, I'm thinking, like, probably by late spring we would know a little. Commissioner is named, we should have them talk to us. Like, why not?
They also have to do the rule making for the ballot proposals.
Yeah.
Implementation.
Yeah. Is there hearings for that?
The what making?
Their implementation, how they implement.
The rulemaking.
Rulemaking, yeah.
Usually there's a couple.
that is where
Yeah.
that is where
The
the public didn't really know what they voted for because it hasn't been determined yet.
And in that sense, I'm less concerned about the rulemaking because like, I know a lot of people that will be in this process, and I think that it's gonna be better than it would have been before, but like it's a lot of, like, you have to trust that, you know.
There's always a public hearing for the
Yeah.
rulemaking, but there's no kind of like fixed ruler process. So that's another thing that we have to make sure that Dante puts out well in advance, that we have to communicate to the community.
So we should be on the lookout for those
Yes.
hearings.
Yes. So just, to close, I just thought it would be worth, and I know many of you have seen this before, but we also have a lot of, because we talked about this a lot during City of Yes, but some of you were not with us, and so it's always worth going over again these purposes of the zoning resolution. It shows up for Article 1, which is the residence districts, Article 2, the commercial districts, Article 3, the manufacturing districts, and then there's also Articles 8 to 14, which is the special purpose districts. We won't talk about that now, but at some point in the future, we may want to talk about that. So if you'll bear with me, I have like maybe about a 10-minute or less presentation. So at the beginning of each section, there's this statement of legislative intent that shows up, and again, we've talked about them a lot before. Providing sufficient space for residential development to meet the housing needs. We do talk a lot about housing. We talked about this a lot during City of Yes, what that meant. And then it goes on to talk about other things that we've talked about, like protecting against nuisance, light and air, the historic interest, Two things that we really haven't talked about a lot are to provide appropriate space for educational, religious, recreational, health, and similar facilities which serve the needs of nearby residents and don't create objectionable influences. Essentially, we talked about it before. Some of it shows up in our zoning framework, this idea that we want to have stability in our district, we want to protect the character, etc. What we haven't really talked about before is the protection of the city's tax revenues. Tried to bring this up before, people didn't really want to talk about it. I think it's difficult to understand, why is it suddenly showing, and by the way, in the commercial districts, we have sort of a parallel statement of legislative intent, and this thing about protecting the tax revenues shows up here too. So why is this in here? Why are we talking about tax revenues as part of the zoning code? And, we're certainly not going to talk about, what we should do with tax revenues or who should pay the taxes. But I think it's worth understanding why there's a relationship to zoning. Because really, I do think that it underlies a lot of the decisions that the city makes about land use that we don't like, don't understand, so I think it's worth knowing how that comes in. So to talk first about the community facility zoning. What's a community facility use? It's any use in certain use groups for open uses. We don't have to worry too much about them because there's no built area involved. There's group 3, with or without sleeping accommodations, the schools, daycares, religious institutions, hospitals, health clinics, community centers, libraries, museums, non-commercial clubs, so like a Y, for example, is a non-commercial club, non-commercial art galleries, non-commercial recreation centers, and philanthropic institutions. This is what we traditionally think of as the community facilities. And then there's group 4, which is public service buildings and infrastructure. They're mostly not permitted in residential districts or only with special permits. For example, fire stations and police stations can be built new with a special permit. The group 3 is mostly as of right in residential districts. So like your neighbor can have a daycare in their house. You can have a church on an all residential block.
Museum, art galleries, yeah, people are,
Yeah.
those things.
So how do the bulk regulations work? That's how much you can build. There is a large community facility bonus in an R6 non-contextual district. This is important for us all to know because we have lots of this R6 and R7 zoning. Same thing with R7. Okay, so the normal R6 zoning we know is like a 2.43 floor area ratio. And just to be sure, everybody knows what a floor area ratio is, right? Is there anyone who doesn't?
You want floor area, that means that the area of the,
So it's the lot size,
right,
and then how much can you build based on that lot size?
okay, so just,
So
you're saying just
a
the
floor area ratio of 2 means you can build 2 times the lot size. So your lot is 2,000 square feet, you can build a house that's 4,000 square feet. So,
It's the FAR.
yeah.
Okay,
So the normal R6 non-contextual on a narrow street, it's a 2.43 maximum, right? But if you add a community facility now, you can go all the way to a 4.8, which is very big. That's an FAR that's normally associated with an R8. In an R7, it's normally like a 3.44 floor area ratio. With a community facility, you can do a 4.8. These bonuses do not exist in the contextual zoning districts. R6A, 3.0 is what you can normally build residential, 3.0 is what you can build with a community facility. R6B, 2.0 is what you can build with residential, 2.0 is what you get with community facility. Same thing with R7A, 4.0 is what you can build with residential, 4.0 is what you get with community facility. Okay, why they have these big bonuses specifically in the R6 and R7, I don't know. This was created in the 1960s. They probably had a reason, I don't know what it was.
So this hasn't changed under City of Yes?
It has not changed
This
under
is just
City of Yes.
what it has been always.
This is what it has always been. That said, if a building is all community facilities. So like, for example, a school. School buildings are pretty big, So you'll see these school buildings that can go up to like a 4.8 in your R6 district. However, if it has both residential and community facility, and we're talking about especially a lot of these new buildings that go up, they have a community facility on the ground floor. The community facility area is limited to a 1.0. They still get that bonus, but the amount of area that you can do is limited. So these apply to the low density zones as well. And again, in the R1 through R5, and again in the R1 through R5, the density can be almost doubled with a community facility. And so in some of these low density districts, you see people get things they really don't like somebody I know who lives in an R2 district where it's all detached houses. Somebody across the street from him demolished a house and put a Buddhist temple.
There's somebody I know that had a
size.
similar thing.
Awesome.
Had a big, kind of
I did not
strange
like that.
temple on their block.
Awful
Well,
example.
Might be the same
Okay,
one.
my family is Buddhist, and there's a lot of chanting that goes on. And it's loud, okay? It's loud, and when there's a funeral, they're literally banging,
That's
like,
so funny.
for 7 days and nights. It's loud.
Yeah.
I understand.
And I
It's
just,
loud, and it can drive you crazy to hear Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha.
Yeah, I know, this happened in somebody's property. Like not,
So-
it wasn't a Buddhist temple, it's another kind of temple, but it's very,
Active.
and very out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
What temple is it?
Nursing homes are another thing that
Kind of thing.
low density districts often object to, like, 'cause sometimes they build very big nursing
Mhm.
homes. Okay, so what else?
Another example would be, a mosque with a call to prayer 5 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that bad?
If you don't wanna hear it, it's not.
And you hear it throughout the whole neighborhood.
Interesting.
You could say the same about church bells.
Church bells, yeah.
Go to Fulton
Now
Street.
try being,
Frank
okay,
Klezmer, I don't know.
try being in a place where on one side of you is a mosque, on the other side is a church. This happened to me once, I was in a hotel. And the mosque started the call to prayer at 5, the church started the bells at 7. And according to the locals, they were competing with each other to be heard, okay? This
I used
went
to live
on
with
for
one, I used to
hours.
live with one of those.
I lived on an enclosed block in Chelsea when I was in seminary, which was now bought out by Vanderbilt University. It's going to be a campus, but yeah, we had 6 a.m. Bells and then like chanting coming from the chapel, and it was surreal to have that happen in New York City. But I did not feel, I did not want to talk to the neighbors at the time because like I'm sure they did not appreciate any of that. And then they decided to retrofit the entire camp. This is literally like 21st, between 20th and 21st and 9th and 10th Avenue. And they decided to retrofit the entire campus for geothermal, which is like deep drilling for a very long time. And so it was not, like ultimately that became the High Line, like they created the High Line out of that project. But the Rapsky Group I think had bought it, so this was like a while back, but yeah, the drilling was kind of what put it over the edge for the locals.
Okay, so what else? Special types of housing can be community facilities can also have sleeping accommodations, and that's things like Covenant House, which is a shelter for runaway youth. Could be an NYU dorm, right? These also get the bonuses, but they're subject to a lower floor area ratio unless they get a city planning commission special permit. And those have conditions on them, which are good, actually. You know, it can't unduly obstruct light and air to the adjoining properties. It must result in satisfactory site planning and urban design, relationships of buildings to adjacent streets and the surrounding area. The facility won't require significant additions to supporting services for the neighborhood, and the street will be adequate to handle the traffic generated. But if the city planning commission decides it meets all those conditions, I'm just gonna laugh if I look at you, Teresa.
I'm sorry.
Me too. Then it can go up to the 4.8, that for the R6 or R7. And so you have to understand that, this means that the districts that have these R6 and R7s are the ones where these facilities are going to be built. Because it's very hard to build them, if not impossible, in the very low density areas and the contextually zoned areas. They don't get those kinds of bonuses. Okay, what else? So also community facilities can be in commercial districts, right? So like we know that in R6, for example, you can do 2 floors of commercial. It can be all commercial, like 2 floors of retail. But you can also add a community facility use to that. And when you do the commercial plus the community facility, you can get up to the 4.8. So like, for example, that building on the corner of Empire where the Lidl is, that has the Lidl, it has some type of, no.
January.
It's got some type of community facility, I'm not sure what, but I think it's like some type of medical or something. That's usually what they claim for community facility, because medical pays like market rate rents, it's not like a nonprofit that has no money. So that's usually the community facility that we see in this district.
They seem like a lot of them seem to be like doing anything.
So the C82 has this big community facility bonus, much like the R6. The R4 and the R5 can go up to a 2.0 community facility, much like the, the R6. And the M1 districts have a big community facility bonus too. They can go from a 1 FAR, where it's just the commercial uses, to a 2.4. And we only have a small patch of M1 in our district down near Clarkson, but people are using that community facility bonus. There's some like kind of big 6-story buildings there, and I thought like, what the heck? How have they gotten beyond 1 story? And it's because they claimed community facility, and I think they're claiming it's a medical use.
Yeah, because it's near.
Oh, I know I've heard about that.
Yeah.
So,
Dialysis
talked about
places
that,
and all
right?
kinds of
yes,
things, yeah.
Rod mentioned it. So that's,
I have a question.
yes.
What happens if they, initially when they apply for the zoning variance, they have a medical facility, and then the medical facility moves out? Can they do whatever they want with that unit?
It has to be
It has to
community
remain.
facility.
a community
The
facility.
question I'm not really sure about is, do they have to certify to someone that it's or prove to someone that it's community facility?
I don't think there's a certification for that. I think it's like specific categories and like, yeah, I actually never thought about how they would enforce that, yeah.
Well, the building 703 Midwood,
Yeah.
he's claiming it's medical. And in order for him to do what he did, he had to put 1 residential in there. So maybe they would do something like that. Claim the first floor is just what has to be, and then everything else they can change it. So we really have to see, because they'll just put 1 and say, well, look, we're doing it.
Right.
And then who knows what they could do. But that's a good question. Do
Oh,
they have to?
Is that M1? M1?
No, by us
That's
it's
an
R6.
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 That's an R6.
That's why, but if you look on it, this building is like 1 million stories. It's only 4, but it's humongous against these little small 2-family houses. And I know, I don't think the neighbors, I really haven't went to speak to them about it, but that's a good example to get them, listen, you need to join, you need to be involved, you need to understand,
Yeah.
because this could happen again.
Definitely.
So that is a perfect example for me to
So
go
they're-
on that
they're-
practice.
Are they still building it, or is anything
It's
happening
done.
there?
No,
It's
they're doing it
Yeah.
inside now. Our next question is, are they gonna block off the streets and act like it's for medical ambulance only? That's the next thing. Are they gonna take away the parking? And the school is right across the street, so people utilize, so we're waiting to see what's gonna happen, but
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was going on.
Anybody else have any comments or questions about community facilities?
I wanna
It can-
go
it can
over
be-
there.
So how
I
do
wanna
you-
look at this. I
How
wanna
did you
see.
come up with this? Were you just dreaming one night and just flicking through, just going through all of the texts and like, oh?
So in view of the fact, in view of the fact that it's a sort of quiet period where we're sort of waiting to see what's going on, it's worth, I think,
Looking at what
talking
we
about
have.
these aspects of the zoning resolution that we haven't
Especially
talked
what
about.
can
Because it's
happen.
gonna come up, it's gonna come up and we should be ready. And so that's community facility zoning in a nutshell. It can be good, like if we wanted a Y, it's good. Or a museum, it's good. If it's one of those medical facilities and it's totally out of context, it's not good. So actually, my presentation is cut off. Some of the presentations seem to have more stuff. So, back to the issue
The
of
taxes?
tax revenue, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
why
didn't
is
know about
it,
these.
why is it in the zoning resolution? So I copied this chart from, I think it was like the mayor's annual budget review, right? And you can see that real estate taxes is 29% of the total budget, and it's the largest single component of tax revenue for the city. Even compared with income taxes, there's different types of income taxes, but personal income taxes, 14%. Other income taxes, which I guess is corporate or whatever, is another 12.5%. So you can see why, and real estate taxes basically is property taxes. So this is important to the city. The city cares about.
That's why they keep going up.
Okay, so, by class, property taxes, where is it coming from? It's coming from class 4 commercial. That's your office buildings, your retail, maybe your industrial. But I can tell you that, once again, the single biggest component out of class 4 is the office buildings, especially in Manhattan. 40% is multifamily, that's rental buildings, including co-ops and condos. 1 to 3 family is relative, and the utilities and weird things, that's a relatively a smaller percentage.
That can change though, because don't they make a decision on how much, or how they change this pie, every year or every couple of years on, how,
So they
the percentage
can,
of
it's
commercial
not
versus-
usually changed drastically. I mean, I know like my property taxes go up the maximum every year, which is like 4% a year. They can also change your class percentage, and again, like they tinker with that a little bit every year. But it seems like what the city and the independent, you know, like what the controller and the independent budget office is projecting is that these would be relatively stable. You know, obviously there's concern that revenue from commercial may be a little bit weak. Maybe it's not going up, maybe it's, you know, declining slightly.
So just a quick question,
yeah.
whether a building if it's vacant, they're still having to pay their property taxes on a commercial building, right? Vacant or empty
Yeah.
or full,
Yeah.
they're still having to
Yeah.
pay the tax
still-
They're
every
still
year.
having to pay the taxes.
But if they don't, that's where the tax liens come in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
unless they knock it down.
And so how does this
They still have to pay the
relate?
taxes on the land.
How does this
Just
relate
the
to this
land,
idea that zoning is supposed to conserve the city's tax revenue? So, I mean, like, it obviously relates to this idea that we don't want people to neglect their property and, you know, let it fall into disrepair, and then they stop paying their taxes and so on. So this goes back to this idea that we talked about before, that we don't want zoning to encourage people to speculate on the land as opposed to using it and, you know, renting it out or you know, like doing something to get cash flow, right? So that's one way. The other way, which maybe didn't exist in the 60s but does today, is what kind of property is getting tax abatements, right? So we now have.
So much money on tax abatements.
So we now have 485X and its predecessor, 421A, which it's not, you know, completely taking the taxes down to zero, but it exempts the increase in value due to construction in exchange for income restricted or rent stabilized units, and in some cases construction wage requirements. So, for example, like if somebody knocks down a, you know, 1 or 2 family house that's paying $6,000 a year in property taxes, and they put up an 8-unit building, they can still, that's now worth, you know, like 5 times as much or 8 times as much, you know, they can now pay that same $8,000 a year, and they now have whatever, 8 times as many people, but they're still paying the same amount of property taxes. So one of the
What?
reasons,
Really?
That's a privilege.
yeah, I mean, under the new 485X, outside of Manhattan, projects that are 6 to 10 units don't need to get a 10-year abatement without affordable housing, but half of the units have to be rent stabilized. So, this requirement to conserve the tax revenue means that you can't actually the tax revenue can't actually decline, right? You can't go from 6,000 to 0. But obviously there's this other side of the equation, right? Where if you have more people and they need more services, it's now costing us a lot more money, but we're not getting more money, right? But there's also industrial and commercial abatements, which is outside of the Manhattan core. there is an exemption for construction or renovation of commercial buildings. It's not as big as the abatement for residential, but it's still there. So, you know, when we think about what our zoning is encouraging, it's something to keep in mind. You know, don't have the ability to do a deep dive. If people are interested, maybe we can invite the IDO to present something. But it's something for us to be aware of.
Aware of in what direction?
Right? So, I mean, the zoning code is obviously saying, directing us to think about conserving tax revenue, right? And so, when we think about what is the effect of the zoning, what does it encourage? What kind of development is it leading to? If something is being demolished and is being replaced with something else, what's the effect on tax revenue, right? And so,
Is the argument that it's always better for tax revenue to keep things status quo?
well, you actually have to do the calculation, right? I mean, is the building going to pay property taxes, right? Because almost all rental development, new construction rental development in districts like ours is gonna take the tax abatement. Because if the construction is just too expensive to rent even at market rate without the tax abatement.
So you argue that
Condos-
tax abatements are inherently anti-preserving the city's property tax revenue, or the tax revenue in general?
It certainly works against that. I mean, the condos, however, are supposed to be paying property taxes. You know, they're also, if new people are moving in, they pay income taxes, but how much are they paying? I don't know if you guys know what the city income tax rate is.
Well, there's also I know there's been a lot of discussion about different districts in the neighborhood, particularly like Park Slope has some kind of abatement, and they pay less taxes in residential spaces over there, like a lot less than over in this area.
No, they don't. Everybody pays under the same system, but there's, okay, so maybe we should take this offline, because I don't really want to get into this. It's not really a zoning question, it's more of a zoning question, right? Like, let's say Park Slope was zoned to, you know, allow for a lot more new development. What would be the effect on tax revenue? It's not zoned to allow a lot of new developments, but we are zoned to allow a lot of new development. So like, just to give you an example, we had like a single family house, a block away from me, that was demolished and was replaced with 3 new construction townhouses. They're getting a tax abatement under 485X, so it's paying exactly the same amount. They don't have to do affordable housing. You know, what is the effect on taxes? The people moving in might be bringing more income and paying more income taxes, but city income taxes are relatively low, right? And what kind of services are they going to need? And so you remember during City of Yes, there was a huge debate about what kind of services we need to make more development possible. And it's a lot of very expensive things, like sewers, and some districts, they need schools, right? Now we want universal childcare, right? These are all things that cost a lot of money when we have more population. So it's something to think about, you know, what we're doing.
Sanitation services.
I know everyone's trying to go home, so
All right, yeah, I'm gonna have to.
continue this debate further.
You want to say something? You barely said anything, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, if you have questions or comments,
Yes,
I just want to put it out there.
Digest this, you prepared this.
I did.
Thank you for putting together this deck.
Excellent.
You're not gonna say anything?
we're at the end.
It's too late.
Okay, I don't wanna.
You have to start with
but-
this,
Nine
Suki.
o'clock.
Politely,
Yeah, you
what
got
is
that.
it?
When me and Josh are energized, you have to start with this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, we'll argue.
Suki, I have one quick question.
Yes.
You mentioned about getting notification by sale, because that's when you should, it's too late once they already ask, or apply for a zoning change.
Yeah,
So that, people, residents, neighboring residents should get the notification of the sale. Problem is, you only get notification of a sale once they register with the city registrar, right? That could be
Yeah.
months later after
think
the
so.
actual sale.
yeah, but that, I mean, like, what else can you do?
Right.
Yeah.
You could set up one of those notifications where when a page changes on the website, you get a notification, and you're noticed. That's about the only get around way I know about it.
Do you want to adjourn? Adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
So can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded?
Oh my God, we didn't do the vice chair.
You didn't even have it on there.
Just adjourn next time.
Yeah,
Oh, well, I don't think you wanna do it anyway.
it's not on the agenda, right?
All of
Do we want to do it now?
Does anyone want to be vice chair?
Anyone
We have a
speak
quorum.
up,
What
I
would you
will-
do?
yeah.
Not yet.
It has to be a community board member, right?
It has to be Benny, I, Joshua,
Yeah,
or
it's one
Max.
of you, it's one of you four. Gets to be the vice chair.
I did it last time, one of you should do it. I'll do it, but
You
you
can do
know.
it, Teresa.
You wanna do it?
I don't care, one way or the
You
other.
like doing it.
I don't do anything with her.
You want it on?
Alright, I like it.
You like it. Let's do Teresa. Teresa's in charge. Teresa, congratulations. You're appointed vice chair.
Wait,
We gotta vote, we gotta vote.
Guys, if you're
We gotta
prepared to
vote.
vote tonight, please sit down. Otherwise, we have to do it next time.
I'm prepared to vote. I motion Teresa
We're all
vice chair.
We're all sitting.
So do we have a motion to nominate Teresa?
I nominate Teresa.
I
Okay.
accept.
Is there anyone else who wants to nominate themselves? Okay, do I have a second?
I
Second.
Second, okay. Can we vote?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Abstentions? Okay, so Teresa's the vice chair.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
I know you're gonna do a great job. Are we adjourned?
Yes.
Did we,
Okay,
did we
motion
already?
to adjourn.
Thank you, motion. Okay.
So I know who I met today.
Sorry, missed
Good.
it.
Know who I met today. I met the
What
executive
was
director of
it?
Solid
Are we
Air.
gonna take this off?
Oh, interesting.
Are we gonna take this off?
I'm sorry.
Really?
Turn off?